everyone, Pastor Sean here. So we're beginning our series on the book of Esther this week, and I thought it would be helpful if I could give you some of the literary and historical background to this book before we jump in on Sunday mornings. So Esther, first of all, is a history. It is written as a history and it faithfully records actual events. At the same time, Esther is a funny book. Now, it's not a comedy for the sake of being funny. Rather, it's a satire, meaning it has a specific object it's poking fun at. And that object is the Persian Empire and its cultural power structures. If you're kind of a rebellious person and you like the concept of speaking truth to power, you're going to really appreciate the book of Esther because it's all about speaking truth to the power of the Persian Empire. And so what is the Persian Empire? Well, the Persian Empire is what we tend to call the Middle East today, was back then called the ancient Near East. And you can see here, note how Jerusalem is there, the bottom left, and kind of in the upper middle you have Assyria, and below that you have Babylonia. These two play a major role in the progression of the Old Testament. After the death of Solomon, at the height of ancient Israel's power, the nation split. You have 10 northern tribes called Israel and one southern tribe called Judah. And after a few centuries of civil wars on and off, 720 years before Christ, Israel, those 10 northern tribes, ceased to be a thing when the Assyrian Empire, seen here in purple, invades and takes them over. The 10 northern tribes are lost to history, and Judah surrenders to Assyria, becomes a vassal of that empire, and for the next century or so, they just exist as that oppressed people until the Babylonian Empire comes along and wipes out the Assyrians, and they take over instead. Now, rather than killing everyone like the Assyrians did, about 600 years before Jesus, Babylon conquers Jerusalem and takes most of the ruling class into captivity back to Babylon to make them less like their native culture and more like Babylonians. Fast forward 2 generations, about 80 years, and Babylon itself then falls to the Persian Empire. As you can see on this map here, this was a mighty empire ruling from modern day Greece and Egypt all the way to the border of modern India. It was the most powerful empire to date, and in many ways, in spite of its power, it was very enlightened. Instead of conquering a land, paying for a standing army to impose its will, Persia actually allowed all the Babylonian captives to return home, practice their own religion, and have their own government, as long as they paid taxes and didn't rebel. So once he had started this empire, Cyrus the Great, this guy, the first Persian emperor, he then released all the captives to go home if they wanted. This is called the Edict of Cyrus. So all of these various nations, including the Jews, were welcome to stay in Babylon, and many did, and they were also welcome to take up residence in the capital of Susa in modern-day Iran, which many of them did, including Esther and her family. See, the Persians figured out this imperialism thing really quickly. Make your culture so attractive that you won't need an army, because the cultural pressure itself, assimilation, will conquer for you. So they concentrated on laws, on art, on beauty, on architecture, on philosophy, on literature, and on science to become a wonderful, attractive, enlightened culture that would just wipe out all the other cultures because people would prefer it over their culture. And as the book opens, Cyrus's grandson Xerxes is now on the throne, having crushed rebellions in Babylon and Egypt. He is at the apex of his power. And remember how I told you Esther was a satire? The book of Esther makes fun of this guy, Xerxes, the whole time. The book makes fun of Persian power structures and its attempts at cultural assimilation. And here is where we will find a tie-in for today. Esther shows us what faithfulness looks like in a predatory culture bent on assimilating all into its version of truth. So, if you feel pressure to deny or hide your faith, Esther is for you. If you are afraid for the future, how is the church or Christianity going to continue? Esther is for you. If you are tired of the cultural elites looking down on you for your faith and you want a good laugh at them, Esther is for you. And if you want to see again the beauty of Jesus doing behind the scenes what his people could not do for themselves, Esther is for you. I would encourage you to sit down and read the book of Esther at one sitting. It's a great story. You'll really like it. And then come and join us for the next 2 months on Sunday mornings as we go through this book verse by verse, seeing the beauty of Jesus and the truth of God and the strength he gives us for faithfulness in a predatory culture. We'll see you then.